everyone. I'm Carnes, and this is Living Consciously. I think you'll be glad you joined us today because we're going to talk about your mind and your money. What have they got to do with each other? Well, it turns out everything. How we perceive supply. And you know, this is a spiritual problem because supply is in the realm of spirit, and it comes through us by means of us according to our willingness to allow it to flow. So it's about ease and flow. I'm going to start off with a rather provocative statement. It's intentionally provocative, but it's a truth. Money is not the root of all evil. Neither is the love of money. I don't know about you, but I love money. I love what it can do. I love the good it can bring in the world. I love money. Say that out loud and see how it makes you feel. The root of all evil is a belief in lack and struggle. Underneath that, there's a sense of there's not enough of anything to go around. And that causes enormous problems in our world. A belief in lack can lead to all kinds of antisocial behavior. And if it isn't outward, we turn it inward, and it can become addiction, it can become self-rejection, it can become all manner of psychological states that are not healthy. If it's turned outward, it can be crime and violence. You know, one of the great metaphysicians of the 1800s was a woman named Emma Curtis Hopkins. And she said the only thing anyone is doing is saying this to themselves unconsciously. There's good for me and I ought to have it. The problem is we don't always know how to get it. And how to get our good is a spiritual experience. And that's what we're going to talk about today. You know those guys on Wall Street a few years ago who bilked so many trusting investors out of their life savings? They did not have a consciousness of wealth. They had a consciousness of lack. And that's why they were able to justify in their minds taking somebody else's good away from them. That's why the robber hits you on the head and takes your purse. There's good for me and I ought to have it, but I don't know how to get it. So I'm going to do it the best way I can think of. It really is that simple. Money is a symbol in our culture of power, but power is not money. Money is just paper and metal. You know, I'll tell you a story that I always tell in my prosperity classes, and it's a true story. It happened to me. In 1993, I was asked to move to Calgary, Alberta, Canada, to become the spiritual director of what was then known as the Center for Positive Living. Well, I had never lived in Canada, and of course, getting used to the weather was a big thing. But so was getting used to the currency. Canadian money looks like monopoly money, with its little pinks and pale blues and greens, and the picture of Queen Elizabeth on it. Doesn't look like money to me. So this is what happened one day to really drive this point home. It was a huge aha for me. I lived on the 5th floor of an apartment complex with, of course, an elevator. And one day I took the elevator and it stopped on the 3rd floor, and this young couple got in. And they looked very much like young professionals with their little power suits on. And he was carrying a couple of bags and a briefcase. And she said to him, "Do you have the release form?" And he said, "Yeah, I do." And she said, "Well, let me see it." He said, "Well, it's kind of okay." And he unlatched his briefcase and it fell open, and a huge pile of Canadian money fell on the floor of the elevator. And I'm standing there looking at it. And I realized it meant nothing to me. I realized I didn't have an emotional hit seeing all that money. It was a lot of money. If it had been American money, my mind would have gone berserk. Oh my God, look at all that money. Oh my God, how can I get some of that? Oh my God, I wonder what they're going to do with it. Oh my God, I need to help them pick it up. If this is valuable, right? Nothing happened like that, because I wasn't attached to the symbol. You see, that's what happens when we give money all the power in and of itself. We lose power ourselves. So money is just a symbol for our belief in supply. What is our current belief in supply? We're going to look at that today. This is a very important, your mind and your money. They are intrinsically woven together. So let's begin as redefining money as nothing more than congealed, if you will, energy, potential. And in order to activate the potential, What do we have to do? Circulate it. We need to be actively involved in the circulation of the money that we do have in order to give it space or room to multiply, and it will. It will not multiply if you keep it in your purse, if you keep it in your wallet, if you keep it stored under your mattress. It must be activated and it must start to move. So what stops us from freely circulating our money, and you know, there's lots of wonderful ways to do it. What stops us from maybe taking someone to lunch or picking up a check or donating to our favorite charity is this deadly belief in lack. And it is a perception that is widespread in the world and needs to be corrected. The belief in lack extends into every part of our life. There's not enough time. There's not enough love. There's not enough opportunities to work. There's not enough peace. There's not enough this, and there's not enough sleep, and there's not enough that. And it goes on, and we live in this terrible reality of not enoughness. And it's coming from us. Am I enough? You know, am I enough to earn a greater amount of currency? You know, think of the word current, and currency, it means energy. You know, no one can pay you what you're worth. It's not possible because you're priceless. Your potential's unlimited. They can only pay you what you're willing to take, what you're willing to accept. And they pay us according to our expression. And when we enhance our expression, we tend to generate more currency or energy in the form of money in our lives. It's all tied together. So it really is important for us to do a mental inventory about what we believe. And it starts with an intervention. Now, it's not like an intervention where a lot of your friends are going to come to your house and say, Carol, we're here to help you because you have a lack consciousness. Why don't you pick up the check when we go out? How come you can never travel with us? How come you're driving around in that beat up old car? We're here to intervene and help you expand your consciousness of wealth, your consciousness of supply, your consciousness of prosperity, and your ability to live on a higher level with money in your life. No, that's not going to happen. Maybe it's kind of a good idea, actually. Maybe we'll do that. No, don't show up at my house, okay? We need to intervene on our own behalf. And you can actually do this with any area of your life. You can do it about relationships, and you can do it about your work, and you can do it about your health. It's to intervene in the train of thought that you notice yourself having much of the time about supply. So we need to get honest with ourselves, and we need to pay attention to the dialogue that we're having. You know, we're always having a conversation with ourselves, an inner conversation, and it extends out into the world. So let's pay attention. This is called mindfulness. Let's pay attention to how often we speak about lack. And it can be as simple as hearing yourself say, I can't afford it, over and over again. There are other ways to think about this. I choose not to do this right now, maybe at another time, but don't affirm that you can't afford. Affirm that you're choosing not to take that particular action at that time. It can be thinking about yourself as an outlet for the circulation of wealth. And wealth takes many forms. It can be the circulation of your compassion, your kindness, your love, your humor, your understanding. When we start circulating the rest of us, we notice that our supply increases. This is an interesting point, maybe a little controversial point, but the more gregarious and magnanimous we are, the more we tend to prosper. You know, people can get miserly with their goodwill. They can get miserly with their love and their understanding, and they're holding back, and they're holding on to old resentments or angers. You can't prosper doing that. So we want to pay attention to what is going on in our inner mind. And supply is the operative word today. It's an old-fashioned term coming out of transcendentalism, which, by the way, is what we are. A new thought is transcendentalism evolved. We are the direct descendants of the transcendentalists. Walt Whitman, Ralph Waldo Emerson, Theodore Parker, George Ripley, Margaret Fuller, all those wonderful people. I just started teaching a class last night about it, and that's why I'm really thinking about ourselves in that light. Transcendentalists, look it up. So it's a word, supply is a word that comes from that understanding that everything in the visible world comes from an invisible realm, and it travels through the avenue of somebody's awareness, some consciousness. And the reason we all have different experiences is because we all have a different perception of life, a different perception of different consciousness of what supply is. So when we see that there's something invisible in the universe that responds to us by corresponding to our best ideas, then we begin to live in a co-creative relationship with that. And supply is a part of that. So is love, joy, peace, intelligence. So let's start with very practical ideas about seeing the absolute abundance that we already live in. Now think about this. Before you were born, you were completely supplied. You had shelter. You were living in the best condo there is. You were floating around in the ultimate tanking experience. In the womb, you were fed intravenously. I mean, sometimes I think that would be kind of cool. Fed intravenously. You were provided with everything you need. And you had enough intelligence to make your own body out of your intelligence. Oh yeah, PBS did a special a few years back called The Miracle of Birth. You could probably get it on the archives of PBS. But it was about how the intelligence, once the sperm unites with the egg, and it begins to divide and do what it does it because intelligence is inherent in it. It knows how to make a body. It knows how to create the cells that go together. So liver cells hook up with each other. Heart cells hook up with each other. They don't go errant and running around and making some weird version of themselves. They do what intelligence knows how to do. Not only that, we create our own brain. The intelligence that you are, your mind, creates your brain so that it can process thought, it can hold memory, and it can function as a kind of an organic computer for us while we're on this plane. But we did it. Intelligence precedes birth or precedes any form. Now this is really in line with what I'm talking about today. Intelligence and the right use of it precedes your supply. So we want to use our mind intelligently. The other thing you had before you were born was individuality. You were already you. You know, I have 2 children who are now middle-aged adults. I don't know how it happened, but they're older than me now. And they are the same people they were the day I brought them home from the hospital. I mean, those little beings were who they are. And I could see it because I didn't have a perception that a newborn was a lump of clay for me to shape. I didn't see them as empty vessels for me to fill. I saw them as whole beings arriving on the scene, and they still act like the same beings in the sense of their basic personality was already there. So is yours. Who you are preceded your birth. What I'm driving at is we have everything we need to be who we are, and that means on the level of time-space dimension in the culture we've created, which includes money. So, like, you know, jokingly I always say, we're not trading goats, which is a little unwieldy. No, we're accounting for the movement of energy with something called money. And we're meant to have whatever we need when we need it to fully prosper and be ourselves. All right, so we're going to take a little break. We have some wonderful sponsors who have some ideas to share with you. When we come back, we're going to talk about how to create a prosperity consciousness. So don't go away. We'll be right back.
Attention homeowners, apartment complexes and business parks and homeowners associations. Now is the best time to make your property beautiful again. Since 1967, Gonzalez Landscaping has offered beautiful professional landscaping services to all of southern New Mexico. Our team has been designing and installing landscapes for over 47 years. Where quality is an obsession, Gonzalez Landscaping is locally owned and operated. We are licensed commercial, residential specialists dedicated to providing reliable and quality service. We offer residential and commercial landscaping design, full lawn, tree and shrub care, with annuals and perennials, tree and palm trimming, spring and fall cleanups, mulching and more. Let us do the work at prices you can afford. We service all of Las Cruces. We are New Mexico's premier commercial landscaping and residential landscaping company. Visit us online at gonzalesnursery.com or call us for a free estimate. 575-382-7272.
Welcome to La Buena Vida Women's Club, located away from the crowds but close to home. Come in throughout the day for Jazzercise, the world's dance fitness leader for nearly 40 years. Treat yourself to a relaxing massage, or unwind in the lounge area or outside on the balcony with friends. La Buena Vida Women's Club, located and designed with women in mind. For information, call Diane at 650-9721.
And we're back. I want to recap a little bit. Remember I said the love of money is not the root of all evil? No, a belief in lack is the root of all evil, and it causes us to do terrible things to ourselves and each other. The belief in lack is a sense of scarcity. There's not enough of anything. There's not enough to go around. It becomes a heavy emotion. It becomes a perception. It becomes something that colors everything we do. Every relationship we have, everything we look at is kind of infused with that sense of there's just not enough to go around. This is a deadly consciousness to have, and one we can change, and that's what we're going to do in this part of the program. All right. The great thing about perceptions is that they are entirely changeable. You know, you can change your mind. You know, there's an old saying, change your thinking, change your life. It's absolutely true. And of course, we're talking about deep shifts, not just surface thoughts, although it can start there. As we said in the first half of the program, you start watching your thoughts, you start monitoring mindfully what you're saying without judgment, and you begin to change them, you begin to shift them into prosperity thinking. So the first thing we want to do is notice the abundance all around us. When I first came into this teaching in 1975, I was so in struggle with money. I was a single mother and I just had a low-paying job and it was awful. Struggle. But someone gave me the gift of sending me to a conference in Monterey, California, which is one of the most beautiful places on the planet. And it was at the Asilomar Conference Grounds, which is in kind of a forest by the ocean. So what I did, someone suggested this to me. I sat out by the swimming pool, surrounded by the forest, and I started trying to count all the different shades of green and giving them a name. And of course, I couldn't do it. And it began to dawn on me that something as simple as that revealed this inexhaustible supply that this universe is made of. I was reading last night about insects. This will blow your mind. At any time, it's estimated that there are 10 to the 19th zero. 19 zeros after 10, that's a quintillion. There are that many insects alive on the earth at any one moment. That's a lot of bugs. I did a talk once about how many different species of plants and flowers there are. How many grains of sand are there on a beach? Try to count a cup full of, you can't do it. When I was in Hawaii in January, my son and I have a birthday in January, so we went, and we were on Mauna Kea, the mountain, at 9,000 feet at night. It was a moonless night, and all those stars came out. Oh, my God. It was a transcendental experience, believe me. But you couldn't count them all. And all we were looking at was one tiny little portion of the night sky. You know, and they were right there. So what we want to develop, seriously, is a sense of awe and wonder at the miraculous diversity of this universe, and just on this little planet alone. In your body, trillions of cells constantly remaking themselves in the original image and likeness of wholeness and perfection. And a consciousness of abundance, and a consciousness of wholeness, and a consciousness of constantly being supplied by whatever you need to be you affects your health as well. It affects your relationships as well, because then you're not seeking someone to give you something to make you whole. You know that you already are, that it's coming this way, that you are generating it. So look at the world around as a magnificent and spectacular display of abundance, and constantly remind yourself that you are living in the flow. You are living in the flow of supply. It is seeking you. Now, what do you need? You need a better idea. We talked about this in the last couple of programs, and it's a running theme in this teaching. We need a use for more money. That's a practical statement. It's very true. What do you have a use for? What do you want to expand in your life? I'm not talking about some huge idea. I'm talking about, I would like, for example, you could say this, I would like to be able to join my friends on their wonderful trips that they take. I'm always saying I can't afford it. So you have a use for money. Let's say, I want to go to Paris in the spring. That's my next use for money. The universe doesn't care what you do with it. But it does seem to require that it has a place to go, right? So in your consciousness, you want to develop some ideas about what you would do with an increased supply in the form of money. Now remember, money's just one form, because your supply can come through gifts and winnings and windfalls. It can also come from people giving you things like, hey, would you like to stay in our house on the beach for a month while we go traveling in Africa? That happens. Would you like a ride on our yacht this afternoon? Well, it wouldn't happen in the desert, but it's something akin to that. Our supply comes to us from many avenues. As I said earlier, your job is just one of them. It's not the main one. Your job is a reflection of what you hold yourself to be worth. So let's work on our self-worth. You are worth everything. You are worth all the good you can imagine, because you are an expression of the infinite. Call it God if you want, call it spirit, call it the absolute or universal mind, but there's something out of which everything is arising right now. And that something holds everything within it, that anything that comes out of it needs to be itself, okay? So that's where we want to start. Now I'm going to give you an affirmation that's kind of funny. A friend of mine, another minister, a wonderful minister who passed on years ago, her name was Helen Street. But she had a famous little saying that she used all the time, especially when something comes up that you weren't expecting that requires you to spend more money. Like last year, I had to put a new transmission in my car. Okay, I wasn't expecting it. But her little tagline is, "Thank God I'm rich." You know, that is a wonderful way to think of yourself. Well, thank God I'm rich, because that opens up the possibility. This is not magic. It's a principle, but it feels like magic. It opens up the possibility for that supply to come in to prove you right. And it always will. So the sense that you are left out of the prosperity picture because of your age or your ethnicity or your upbringing or the economy is nonsense. None of that has anything to do with anything when you let it go. As long as you believe that, you will have that experience, but every one of us has to step out of our past. We all have to let it go. We all have to stand up in this moment and claim our spiritual heritage. That's what modern New Thought spirituality is all about. And it is just a wonderful teaching that can transform your life for the better. So start thinking prosperity, think wealth, think abundance, see it all around you, name it and claim it, and say, thank God I'm rich. I am wealthy. I have more than I need whenever I need it to spare and to share. I have plenty to spare and share. And you can learn more about this by attending our Sunday experience, which is at the Town of Mesilla Community Center on Calle de Santiago. It's a beautiful space. And we're very casual. Come as you are. Bring your friends. We have kind of a very non-traditional service. I think you'll enjoy it. Meditation. I do a talk, and then you can ask me questions afterwards. Also, we have classes. I just started an Emerson class on Wednesday night. You can still join. One more week, you can still join. Emerson and the Transcendentalists really are the foundation for this teaching. On Tuesday nights, join us for a group meditation, 6 p.m. at our office at 1740 Calle de Mercado. Group meditation is a very powerful way to experience that inner self. You can donate to us by getting on our website. We'd love to share your prosperity and circulate it ourselves. We do a lot of good with it. So join us next time for another edition of Living Consciously. If your friends don't have Comcast cable, tell them to get on my YouTube, Living Consciously YouTube. They can watch previous shows and this one too. So, all right. Thank you so much for being with us today. Have a wonderful week.